Alright, to develop a graph between atomic number on the x-axis and atomic radius on the y-axis, first thing I'll do is I'll highlight all of the data, including the titles of these two columns, the B column and the C column, through all of the elements made available to us. And you'll see that I get this blue highlighted box with a blue border around it. At this point, I've selected this data, and now I want to insert a chart. Now, the chart's pretty good, but scatter data I don't think is going to be the best way of representing this data. So I'm going to select here on chart type. I'm going to select a line chart, and I'm going to do a smooth one. And I'll get these really pretty characteristic shapes. Okay. And now, I got to be honest, the atomic radius versus atomic number is a little bit clunky for a title. So I'm going to go to this Customize tab here, Chart and Axis Titles. And I have a drop-down menu of all the different things that I can change. The first thing I want to change is the chart title, which is this. And when I do that, it tells me what text is the title. I'm going to remove the units section here. And you'll see that it changed here on my graph. Now what's pretty cool is I could add a subtitle in which I describe to people what this graph is about. So I'm looking for a pattern in the order of atomic number. Okay, and so basically I've described to my audience what I'm doing. Now I could also change my horizontal axis title, which is this one here, but I think atomic number is pretty good. Or I could change my vertical. Atomic radius, I like the fact that the units are supplied there. So pretty good. And about the only other characteristic that I would like is I have these major grid lines. I would like to add minor grid lines as well. So I'm going to close the chart and axis titles, and I'm going to go to the bottom here, grid lines and ticks. Okay, we're going to work on the horizontal axis. That's this axis first. And down here at the bottom, I would like to include minor tick grid lines. When I do that, it gives me some more grid lines, and then verticals, I would like to add minor grid lines as well. And now I get this grid pattern behind the data, which I think is pretty good. When I'm done, I'm going to close the chart editor, and I can grab this graph and kind of move it away from the data in preparation for my next experiment. Alright, so to build my second graph, after I've done my radius graph, I'd like to graph the ionization energy versus the atomic number. Now I need to do this in kind of two steps because the column is not right next to each other. So I'm going to highlight all the title of the ionization energy and all of the data contained in that column. I'm going to scroll back up to the top, so I'm kind of in the same place as I was, and then I'm going to insert a chart. Now here's the thing, the chart looks a little bit rough. We need to clean it up, and for example, we need to include the x-axis. So I have ionization energy, but I want to graph it against the atomic number, which is right here. I am going to click on this Add an X-axis, and it asks me to look it up, but to be honest, I'd rather select a data range by using my cursor. So I'm going to click here on this window pane, and it gives me Select Data Range, and I'm going to start with the atomic number and scroll all the way down until the data. I have all the data. And I'm going to click. Okay. Now my graph is still up here near the top, and it's looking a little bit better now, but it's still pretty spiky. So I would like to use not the chart type that they automatically use, this line chart. I would like to select the line chart to be the smooth one. So now it's got kind of the same characteristic as my first chart, and I think it's time to clean up my chart similar to the first one. So I'm going to go to the Customize menu, Charts and Axes Titles, and I'm going to start with the chart title. Now currently it says first ionization energy, and it gives me the units. I'm going to erase the units here in the chart and write versus the atomic number. And you'll see that my title here reflects what I've written in the text box. Now in this one I said I'm searching for a pattern in the order of atomic number. Why don't we include that as a subtitle as well? Looking for a pattern in the order of the atomic number. Yep. All right. Now, I'd like to differentiate one from the next. So I'm going to close out the title. I think, well, wait a minute. Oh, my horizontal axis doesn't have a title. I need to include atomic number here. And then the vertical axis looks pretty good. It has a unit in there. Nice. Okay, so I'm going to close out the titles, and I'm going to move to series. And so currently this series is in a blue color. I'd like to differentiate it, so I'm going to choose red here. And so now I have a red line to represent the ionization energy. I'm going to close this out, and I'm going to include grid lines like I did before. So grid lines and ticks. All right, we have major grid lines, but I'd like minor grid lines, and you'll see that it snaps some grid lines. One thing I noticed, though, that it kind of doesn't make intuitive sense between 10 and 20 to have two minor grid lines. What I think is just to have one grid line to represent 15 atomic number, 20 atomic number. I can do that by right here on the minor count. I can select 1, and to me that makes more intuitive sense. 10, 15, 20. Alright, once I have my horizontal, I can move to my vertical, and I can add minor tick lines, minor grid lines. Okay, now to have two of them doesn't make much sense from 0 to 200, so I'm going to select, let's see, 3. Now that makes sense to me. 50, 100, 150, 200. I think that that is a pretty good looking graph. Once I'm done, I'm going to close out the chart editor, and I'm going to move this graph actually, you know what? I think I'm going to give this graph its very own page. The 3 dots in the top right hand corner, I can move chart, move to own sheet. And when I do that, the chart pops up all by itself. So I think I'm going to label this the ionization energy so that I can find it in the future really easily. So first, ionization energy. I think I'm going to go back and grab this chart and make it its own sheet as well. And I'm going to rename it Atomic Radius. All right, to make our final graph of electronegativity compared to atomic number, I'm going to highlight the title, electronegativity, and all of the data available. I'm going to scroll up to the top, and I'm going to go Insert, Chart. Now, it started me with a rough kind of chart. I need to kind of clean it up. I need to add an x-axis. So I'm going to click in this box, and the window pane here allows me to select data. I'm going to select atomic number again. And I'm going to hit OK. When I scroll up to the top, I have the numbers. It's still pretty jaggedy. I'm going to select a chart type and not select the one that they chose for default. I'm going to do this smooth one again. And I need to add the x-axis. So select range. I'm going to start here and select all the atomic numbers. Alright, once I have those done, now I'm going to start adding details, starting with the chart titles and axes. The chart title itself is electronegativity. I'm going to add the term versus atomic number. And then I added a subtitle which describes what the graph is about and looking for a pattern in the order of atomic numbers. Okay, while I'm here, horizontal axis title, I don't have anything, so I'm going to include atomic number. And then the vertical axis is electronegativity. I think I like that. Alright, I think the last time I selected series, I chose a different line color so I can distinguish. So we have red, we have blue. What about this really bright pink? Okay, now I notice right now that my data kind of gets clipped off down here and up here. So I'm going to, that's the vertical axis. I'm going to adjust the vertical axis. Now the computer will auto-select its own data, but I have control. I'm going to select a minimum value of 0 and see what happens. That really doesn't help. It clips off this data here, so I am going to make it -1. Now this allows me to see the very tippy bottoms of my data set, which I consider pretty important. Now the maximum values, it looks like, is somewhere larger than 4, so I'm going to go 4.5 and see if I can see, yep, I can see the very tippy top of my data, the very bottom of my data. I have the 0 line here, or the origin, just barely negative energies. Okay, good. And that's pretty good, so I'm going to get out of the vertical axis and then finally adjust my grid lines and tick marks. Now, I can do the horizontal axis. Let's see if adding minor grid lines helps. It does, but I really don't, it doesn't make much sense to put 2, so, but if I put 1, then it's 40, 45, 50. Okay, vertical axis. While I'm here, I'm just going to check, see if this makes sense. Ooh, that's too busy. You know what? I like the 0.5 designation as it is. So I think that that looks like a very good graph. I'm going to get it out of Chart Editor. And like all the others, I'm going to move this to its own chart. As opposed to chart, I'm going to right click on it and rename it to be electronegativity. Now it's kind of in the wrong place, so I'm going to grab that tab and I can move the order. And so atomic radius, ionization energy, electronegativity. atomic radius, ionization energy, electronegativity. Cool.